Let's do this again.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're doing a podcast while watching Supernatural. But there's a twist.
Why are you so high?
I'm not.
What is in those Mentos that you're eating? The twist is that I have never seen Supernatural. I've always wanted to see Supernatural. And
Well, since I told you to watch it.
yes, that's true. And I love Star Trek, and you haven't really seen that either. So we are trading season for a season. So we're going to do all 15 seasons of Supernatural and do a season of Trek to counterbalance? Counterbalance? Sure, why not? And we just figured it would be fun to record the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And we're together, and we always have fun talking about shows that we really like.
Oh, yeah, and he's going to want to mention that I work in the film and TV industry.
And I'm going to mention that you work in TV and film. So that is basically where we are. So spoiler alerts, and if you haven't seen it by now, it's on you, and we can't be held responsible because everything we're watching is very old.
Yeah. Well, this week we watched episode 7, season 1, Hookman, which is written by John Shaban.
John Shaban?
Shaban? I don't know.
Oh, cool.
Directed by David Jackson. Summary is the infamous Hookman, a vengeful spirit who kills his victims with a shiny hook that serves as his hand, terrorizes a small college town in Iowa. Sam and Dean learn that all the victims are connected to the daughter of a local minister and race to find and destroy the Hookman's bones before he comes for them.
Bum, bum, bum.
Original air date, October 25th, 2005.
Okay. And what did you think?
Well, first of all, I have a corrections corner
Oh.
that I've been waiting because I didn't want to say it to you. I thought of it a few days ago, but I didn't want to say it to you. I wanted to say it the first time on air because I wanted your genuine reaction.
Oh, boy.
So I was thinking about it the other day. Old school flip phones definitely opened the bottom portion. The key portion is definitely the main part of the phone, and the top opens from there. I don't know what my brain was doing the other week, but yeah.
So what does that mean?
I think that means I flipped it closed with my index finger.
Well, yeah. That was the cool way to do it.
It's practical. It's nothing to do with cool.
No.
But yeah.
No, I disagree.
That's my corrections corner.
Your corrections corner that I was right.
No, that I was mistaken.
Oh, I'm glad that you defined the difference. We got to keep that line there.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, now we can jump into the episode. Do you have any corrections for your corrections corner?
No, I don't this time. I think we're good overall. So
Okay.
for now, I just haven't found out yet. I'm sure there's something.
It's also worth mentioning that I went ahead and bought
Oh yeah, that's a
the
good
DVDs. So
Well, you just bought the season 1 DVDs.
season 1 only because
Because-
I figured I would be able to find the other ones when I go back to my hometown. But I'd mentioned that Amazon, when you buy the digital version, the music is still wrong. And even though you're not allowed, or you're supposedly not allowed per policy to return digital items, I wrote into Amazon, I was like, listen, it is not disclosed that the music is different. And that is the full reason, the full and only reason why I bought this was because of that. And it wasn't disclosed, and the reason why I bought them is no longer valid because it's not the right music. I thought for sure if I bought it, it would be the correct version of the show. So thankfully, they actually were cool about it, and they refunded my money. So then I went ahead and bought a used like new season 1 DVDs from Amazon, and it got here a few days ago. And so I was really happy that we finally were able to have the correct music. And there was 2 different scenes. I was like, this is the right music because it was famous classic rock music. And this one wasn't as imperative, I don't think, because the music wasn't necessarily like, it didn't, I mean, look, I don't know what the filler music would have been, but this one wasn't at least as stark, I guess, of a difference. Like the songs themselves were like, oh, this like lends itself so well to this moment or anything, but it was still nice to hear the real music. That being said, the DVD quality is a little bit less than the Netflix version.
Yeah.
And this one over here doesn't like that we can't use our external speakers.
Well, I feel like we're in a hotel now because it's a flat screen and so all the audio is bouncing off of the wall and it's tinny and canny and gross. I don't like it, but having the music in. So this is our journey of discovery here, is that if you want to have the original music, the original soundtrack with Supernatural, you just have to go get the DVDs.
Yeah.
There's apparently no way to do it on streaming. Even if you buy the product, the digital product, you still don't get the original music.
Yeah. So that's the lesson learned here. And I do recommend it. I'm sure they had the Blu-ray versions, but I heard that season 1 was shot lower quality anyway, so that I don't know that you're really going to get a high quality picture with it regardless. I'm not really sure, but that's for some tech nerd to know about. I don't know about those things. No offense. We need those tech nerds. A good kind of nerd. You know what I mean? Yeah, you get it. Anyway, so yeah, this one was the first episode that we watched with the proper music, even though it wasn't quite as imperative as other episodes to have it, but I'm still happy that we finally have the right music. Yeah.
She's very, very excited about this. Yeah, when the package showed up, you were super pumped. So it's nice that we made the upgrade. Now I just have to figure out the whole speaker thing because that's going to drive me nuts.
Yeah, I get it. It does definitely sound not nearly as good.
Tinny. Yeah.
It's harder to hear the words as well.
Yep.
But anyway.
We'll figure that part out.
So, first impressions.
Oh, mine?
Well, yeah, obviously these aren't my first impressions.
Well, but listen, man, you might not remember everything. Like, I caught a few things.
We can get to that.
Yeah, we'll get there. Okay. All right. I mean, I liked it. I thought there were a couple of really good jump scares, which I was not expecting at all. So those are really good. There were a couple of really good graphics. We've made fun of a lot of the CGI lately, but there were a couple of really good moments in there. The actual storyline itself, it was okay. It didn't really amaze me. They had a theory. They heard one clue. They figured out what it was, like which piece of folklore it was attached to, like immediately. And then the remedy, they got a little stuck on that, I guess, but just needing to destroy everything silver in the house because of the hands. But I did predict the hand thing. I got that one. Wasn't trying to, but I got it. And it was fine.
I do like this one, mostly because I think the Hookman legend is cool. So I like that they did that. That being said, in the early part of the episode, when you see like kind of the introduction to the characters and everything, I was like, I don't remember it being this cheesy looking. With like the scraping of the thing, I was like, what in the world? Okay. So I was a little bit disappointed, let down by that. But I'm not. I get it. It's early aughts, and
it's still 20 years ago. So
yeah, but I still don't remember it being that way. But I was confused why Lori didn't just drive the vehicle away. The keys were in there. Instead, she's like, "Wow."
You were totally fine with her bailing on this guy immediately. He feels like she could just drive away.
Well, she got out and started running.
Yeah, that part you're right.
She wasn't trying to find the guy. She was running. And, the way that she was preparing herself to, take action, okay. Like, I totally relate to that. You're, talking, you're amping yourself up to, okay, you can do this or whatever. And I was like, all right, you go, girl. And then she gets out. I'm like, but the keys are in the
yeah.
And it wasn't a stick shift, so I don't know what she was thinking. Maybe she wasn't thinking. Maybe that's the point. Emotional decision. You just think, I got to get out of there. But
yeah, I mean, this was one of those newer, fancier cars. Because remember, it had the power windows. We had that struggle.
Yeah, we were like, and we were like, oh, man, technology fails you. We're like, yeah, if that was a crank window, she would have been able to just put it up without having to scramble.
Yep. I mean, Rich still would have died, but everybody else would have been fine in this case. It does remind me, because if we talk about the window crank and I don't tell this story, then I'm gonna get angry letters. So Aaron, my cousin, this was like the first time in my life that I ever felt dated.
Oh, I think you've told me this
I
story.
have told you this story. Well, I'm going to tell you again anyway because, beckoning fans. But yeah, this was the first time I ever felt dated. First time I ever felt like there were younger people out there, and I was getting older, but I was still like 20. So stupid 20-year-old. But anyway, so I'm driving down the road, and my cousin Erin is in the back seat, and she is 11 or so at this point. She might be a little bit younger, but we're driving her around. And she just goes, what is that? Like, what? There's something on the door. What are you talking about? There's something on the door. Well, what does it look like? She's like, it's like a stick. What? And we have to go back and forth for a few minutes. I'm driving. I can't just flip it around and look. And she's like, there's a stick in the door. I can't figure out what it is. And I cannot figure, after going back for a few minutes, back and forth, realize that she has never seen a window crack before. Every single time for her entire life, when she's rolled a window up and down, she's pushed a button every single time. So there's my blast from the past moment. But it was fun. It was fun. But also I thought that Dean making fun of Sam for having a custom coffee order was a little bit dated and kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because those were the days.
Also, you're probably happy that they talked about their dad, because sometimes they don't, and you get upset about that.
I do have that note. I do have that note to mention. It was brief, but I mean that pulls it back into this. This episode was fine to move everything forward. Like, they can't all be massive, amazing, awesome episodes, especially in the first season. They've got to have some things just to keep moving things forward.
Yeah,
I think this one did really great to that. I'm probably not going to remember a whole lot about it in the future, but I mean, I liked it. It was fine. I'm okay with moving on. So that was okay.
There was a lot of good Dean one-liners in here, I thought, which was nice. When the sheriff catches him at 9 Mile Road and he puts him down on the ground, and he's like, well, he had the gun.
Yeah. And
we also not exactly sure how Dean got from the ground level up to the second floor, because he helped the 6'4" Sam to get up there, and somehow 6'1" Dean or 6' Dean is able to hop up there without any help at all. And then they go into the window. It's like, be quiet, you be quiet, me be quiet, you be quiet. Yeah, there was a lot of little cool little moments, and he's making fun of Sam being a huge nerd. Did you do your homework? That sort of stuff. So that was fun. And this is also the first time that we see the brothers salt and burn the bones of a spirit. We've not seen that yet, and that becomes a ongoing theme throughout the series, to the point that there is a story of, I can't remember which character right now, and doesn't matter because they don't exist yet in the story, but the actor was in a van with a Teamster driver. We have Teamsters who drive vans to get people from point A to point B, because we're not always, most of the time, we're not within walking distance of all of the different areas.
Like different spots on set.
Yeah, there's base camp, which is where all the trailers are for hair, makeup, and wardrobe, and the cast rooms to get ready. And then there's the actual set, and sometimes there's more than one set, and so you have to get from first set to the other set. And then also there's holding catering, which is where people eat, or you hold the background in it, and that's not always walkable. So you have vans that are always at the ready to be able to take people from one place to the other. And this actor was in a van with a Teamster driver, and he had told him that he got killed on the show, and he's like, and they shoot in Canada, keep in mind, and I'm not coming for you Canadians, so do not come for my Canadian accent right now, and just try my best. But like, Will, did they salt and burn your bones? And he's like, no. He's like, well, then you can still come back. So it became such a thing. Like, so if you salt and burn your bones, then that's it. You're done for. But if you don't, then you can come back as a spirit or whatever. So it becomes a kind of ongoing theme of the Supernatural series of salting and burning the bones, And this is the first time that we see them do that unsuccessfully, though, a little bit. But still, it's the first time, so it's kind of fun.
Can I hear some more of that Canadian accent?
No, and I have Canadian relatives, guys, so
I want to hear so much more of that.
I have Canadian relatives, so this is me impersonating them, okay?
Yeah, and this is coming back up on Christmas.
Oh, whatever.
Oh,
You're not
yeah.
going to remember.
I'm saving it.
You're not gonna
Nope.
remember.
Time stamp of 14 minutes and 50 seconds Canadian accent.
Oh, whatever.
Did you notice when they first got to the university, when the two guys were out working on the car? Did you take a mental picture of that situation? It flagged this so weird to me. It was like somebody who's never worked on a car was an actor to work on a car. Dude's under the hood of a BMW with a Phillips screwdriver and a banana.
Well, he was eating the banana.
It's just sitting there eating a banana and a screwdriver messing under the hood in the engine block. That was hysterical. No, you're not agreeing.
As a female who doesn't know anything about cars, did not clock that.
Okay, Phillips are pretty rare under the hood. They're not impossible, but they're pretty rare. But the banana, I can't say I've ever worked, because when you're working on the engine, your hands get disgusting. Very dirty, very grimy. So anything that is going to have a possibility of transferring onto what you're eating, you just don't touch it. And most of the time, you just don't eat while you're working on an engine for that very same reason.
That's fair, I guess.
But they were just sitting and chilling, eating a banana and holding a Phillips.
Well, I guess John Shaban is not a car guy.
I guess not. At least somebody wasn't. Oh, that was awesome. That actually just made me giggle. But it's the similar kind of thing, and people can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a similar kind of thing because you and I are both trumpet players. But anytime you see like an ad or a commercial or a music video or a part in a TV show or something, and you can look at those trumpet players and tell instantly that they're not trumpet players. It kind of feels like that. You know, they don't have a mouthpiece on their horn, or they're holding the trumpet upside down, or they're holding it with the wrong hand, or any of those things.
Well, it's not usually that bad, but...
It can be. Oh, it's so can be.
I mean, I think that I'm only bothered when it would be something like they're missing a mouthpiece or something. Like, if they're just, like, moving their fingers up and down and, like, pretending to blow, I'm like, okay, sure. Well, I get it. Like, you have to pay extra money for that person to actually know how to play an instrument to be there. So unless it's imperative.
I get it, but try maybe a little bit. Maybe Google an image of what somebody playing an instrument looks like.
Except for, you're talking about people that are among the lowest paid people on the set.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But I always give a lot of credit whenever they have gone through the effort to actually do it, to at least make it look somewhat, even if they're getting it wrong, but they're still trying. I'm not talking about just specifically music, but you do have a risk of alienating, because if you've got somebody playing a trombone, all the trombone players are going to be noticing that. Sure. It's going to register on their radar. You can go over the top and use a lot of resources for something that doesn't matter. I get that. But you have to be careful.
Well, yeah, but that's why I said, as long as there's a reasonable effort to make it not look like a complete farce, then I'm fine. Even though I know it's fake, I don't care. It doesn't alienate me by any means. But if I see someone holding a trumpet upside down, I'm like, okay, really? Nobody on set knew that this was wrong and they couldn't have pointed that out?
Yeah, nobody checked at all.
Well, it's not even that you wanted to look up a video of it. It's like, there's got to be somebody in the entire set that is a musician and knows that that's incorrect. Not that they even play trumpet. They just know that it's incorrect. Or the fact that there's no mouthpiece, that sort of thing. You know, like, those are things that, you know, are very avoidable without even doing any research. So
yeah, there's an image that I've heard or seen multiple times, and it's in the bando world. But it's a student playing a saxophone, and they're holding the saxophone like somebody might hold a saxophone, but the whole mouthpiece is missing. The whole reed, that whole front portion that you put in your mouth is missing. So this kid in the picture literally just has his lips sitting on cork. And it just looks awful. Like, you know, somebody just threw that together. And they ended up becoming, I forget which brand it was even for, but they ended up becoming the butt of the joke. And that's the part that I'm saying should be watched. But that does segue really, really well, because we were talking about Lori getting out of the car, not driving, getting out to run. By the way, she's running for her life, and then she stops and turns around to check. So we needed the plot. I get that part. But that little moment And then there was another moment a little bit later where when the brothers were released from police station, and they got out to the car, and they turn around, and these 4 cops are just running. They're hauling ass, full speed, to get in their car. And you and I both thought the same thing. And you said it. You're like, she's already dead. Like, what are they rushing to? Somebody called in a murder. There's a body here. So we have to run to get there. But they needed it to say, I mean, in the script, we needed it to signify to the brothers that something had happened. But it hit in my question time, my official question time with Stephanie. How does that conversation happen? If there's something that went into the script, and then as it starts to turn into reality for shooting, somebody can look at something and say, okay, that's not how that would happen. Something is wrong about it. And it could be something is placed incorrectly on the set. This would be this, and the hitting the whole, you don't look like you're really playing the instrument conversation. How does that happen when you've got 100, 200 people all watching something and somebody notices that something's wrong? This wouldn't happen this way.
It really depends on the set and how comfortable people are speaking up about things. But, and this is with the running cops, that is going to come either from the actors, like, why would I be running if it's a dead body? But those are all extras, background extras, so they're not going to say anything. And it would be more of a writer-director actor conversation. That being said, again, it depends on the set. I've had relationships, like friendship relationships with writers, and when that writer is the person on set and I see something that looks strange, I might go up to them personally and be like, this doesn't really make sense though, does it? And sometimes they'll have an explanation. Other times they'll be like, look, where you're just ignoring it and it is what it is. Or sometimes they have changed things. Like I remember one time a medic mentioned to me that we had this scene where somebody takes the cap of a needle off with their teeth before like administering whatever the drug is to the victim, patient, whatever. And he was like, that is completely unsanitary, and what a medical professional would never do that. Da, 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 da. And so then I went to the writer. I was like, by the way, the medic just told me this, and then they changed it. So it just really kind of depends on the set and how comfortable people are about speaking up. And some of them are within the jurisdiction, like the second AD, or I think in Canada it's the third AD. They're responsible for the background. So in the example of the band instruments that we were talking about, the trumpet, if they're somebody who knows about band or instruments, they would direct that background actor, hey, you're holding this upside down. This is how you hold it. Can you please do it this way? And in some ways, they are also responsible for those cops running. However, the director could very well have told the second AD, hey, I want them running here. Or in the script, it says they're running. So it's within their control to an extent. At the end of the day, yes, the second is responsible for the background, but it also, too, is the first AD and the writer and the director who all have a say. And it's ultimately the director and writer's vision that you're putting together. So the second isn't going to be like, well, that doesn't make sense, so I'm not doing it. That's not realistic. Depending on how comfortable they are,
right,
they might mention, hey, does this make sense? But again, it just really depends on the set.
So this could have been a conversation where, like, the cop was like, hey, why would we be running here if it's a body, it's not, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
And in a college town, maybe this is a relatively frequent thing, or a larger city, maybe it's more frequent. So this could have been a conversation, and they just decided, okay, we don't have time to deal with this, so we're just going to leave it. It could have been, well, we really need this plot device, and we can't really think of a better way to do it. Because if the guys go outside and they're like, oh, yeah, there was another murder, that would still indicate, but that would be just as bad. So they decided to leave it as is.
Well, what I was actually going to say is I think this is supposed to be a small town. So maybe they're running because they don't get a lot of this. And so they, I don't know, it freaks them out. And so they run. I don't know.
Something to do. Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, I mean, it's also a conversation that can happen during prep. It can happen on the day. It just it just really depends. And with the instruments thing, another person that could help make sure that looks realistic is the prop person, because more often than not, that instrument came from the prop department. And so when they're handing it out to people, they might be able to direct them as to how to hold it properly, because it's their prop. And so they can give advice on to how to use said prop. And if the director is a musician, they might notice it out of the corner of the, like, nope, that's not right, and they can have it change. It just depends on the experience of people that are on set. Somebody clearly, I shouldn't say nobody, but there was nobody in a position of authority that knew enough about cars to know that what he was doing just didn't really make sense. And the thing is, it didn't necessarily have to be that way. They could have given him a crescent wrench, like, why did it have to be a Phillips screwdriver for plot point? It didn't have to be, but there wasn't anybody that either felt comfortable enough to say anything, or someone that was already in position of power to be like, hey, I know a lot about cars and that's not right. Can we please just give him a crescent wrench?
Sure.
And
at the end of the day, it's one of those things that as a viewer can totally be explained away. Like, there were two guys sitting there at the car. The other guy could have been working on it, and he just walked outside and joined, and he was carrying a banana. So dude was like, hey, can you bring me the Phillips? And so that's why he was carrying the Phillips. I mean, there's an easy enough explanation that it's plausible.
Yeah.
It just still looks strange, and it caught my attention.
Yeah.
That pulled away from what was happening.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting part about it. But I do find the fascinating battle between selling the lie and the continuity of everything. Because, I mean, if you think about the details, like when you describe what your day looks like, your shooting day looks like, you don't start at the beginning of the script and work all the way through.
Oh, no.
You shoot all over the place. So literally 10 seconds of screen time could be different days, completely different days of shooting.
Absolutely.
And so just like once you get out of the headspace of, okay, hold on a second, this was all calculated. And then the battle that you guys have to sell it as something other than what it was. It is interesting. Stuff definitely gets through, but all the work that goes into it is kind of remarkable.
That brings up actually an interesting question, because sometimes, like, I've been in this industry for so long, it's hard to know what is common knowledge and what isn't. So before we talked a lot, did you know that we shoot things way out of order?
Yeah, I did. I didn't know the depth. Like, the more we've talked, the more you tell me, like, how this stuff gets done. Like, for example, that there's weeks of preparation before it gets shot. In essence, like, there's two different teams working on these episodes at a time. I didn't know that. I didn't know how much work and planning and execution and the meticulousness of timing. I didn't know how deep it was. So I knew that things were shot out of order. A lot of that was from like behind the scenes director's commentaries when they're like, oh yeah, this was the first scene that we shot and it's the last damn scene in the movie.
Yeah.
So I knew that there was a normalcy to shooting out of order. I think maybe I would have guessed that maybe the default setting was try to shoot in order and then go out of order whenever you need to. Like if you have an actor that needs to shave or they gain weight or lose weight, like in a movie or something, then there was a lot of flexibility, then you take it out for that. But in general, you try to stick to order just to have a place to start. That would have been my guess. Now I've been able to see that it's a deck of cards. So you guys take every single shot and it's a deck of cards. They can be organized however they need to be for maximum efficiency and logistics and scheduling and budgets, and it's all over the place.
It really is all over the place. I would say the most amount of in-script order that is considered is on the actual day you're shooting. So if we're shooting a bunch of scenes in a cafe, we're more than likely going to start with the first scene that is, like, say it's scenes 10, 15, 27, and 50. We're not going to shoot 50 first.
Unless there's a compelling reason.
Yes, unless there's a compelling reason. We would, on a situation like that, we would go in script order. The other consideration is exactly what you said is, like, if there is a reason, like, the beard thing, like you're talking about. Now, granted, we can put on a fake beard. So, that wouldn't be enough of a reason to be like, all right, well, we definitely can't switch this because he has a clean shaven now and there's nothing we can do about it. Like they would be like, no, we'll put on a fake beard. We'll make it work. But it is definitely a consideration, especially because it takes time to do those sorts of things, putting on a fake beard and everything.
But those conversations occur weeks in advance.
Yes.
And those things are all discussed. Like if somebody's going to shave halfway through, are we going to do all the pre-shave content first? Are we going to put on a beard? But then you have a conversation with hair and makeup, or would that be props?
About what?
Beard. About putting on a fake beard.
It's makeup.
That'd be makeup?
Yeah. It's character.
Okay.
Well, but it's on the face.
That's true. And we have talked about that. Yeah. So then there would be a subsequent conversation here, and then probably some sampling, some peaks, some views of doing, we're going to do this before it actually goes day up.
It depends.
So we can see what it looks like.
Depends.
And so all of those things get calculated and discussed. Mm-hmm. And then the thing that I have always just found to be bizarre as we get further along and I learn more about your industry is how much all of that planning goes to shit so fast.
Yeah.
If it's too windy outside, if it starts raining, if somebody gets a cough, there's so many things that can just derail all of those meticulous plans.
Literally, it's so funny because
you end up building every plane mid-flight.
On Friday, we were shooting on a rooftop, and it was extremely windy. On the ground level, it was windy. Like we would open up trailer doors, and they would just get wrenched open by the wind. And so you can only imagine how bad it was on this rooftop. And so the start of our day was figuring out how we can as least as possible be on the actual roof part. There was an indoor portion and an outdoor portion to this roof. And unfortunately, the script didn't allow for it to be all moved inside. But our lead actors were all inside for the entire time when originally they were supposed to be out on the roof deck. But it was so incredibly windy. We had a little girl out there too, a little girl actor, and I was like, that girl is gonna fly away. Yes, blow away. It was intense amount of wind. It was comical if it wasn't so cold. It was comical amounts of wind. But we had to completely reconfigure that scene, and luckily we had like the writer, showrunner, like he was there. So it was a much easier process to getting that reimagined than if he wasn't there.
So when you say when the script allows, you're talking about like, okay, this dialogue between these two characters, it doesn't really matter if it's on the roof or if it's inside. So let's just move it inside because of the conditions.
Yes.
Outside. But some of these things we have to do on the roof, so we're going to maneuver.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the real-time adaptation that I mean, you guys could have had so many conversations about this shot on the rooftop and on the location scout and all of these conversations about this. But then whenever you get there day of, all that planning has to take a back seat to the reality of the situation.
Yeah. Yep. And we've had to rearrange days like before. Because actually, another thing that happened last week, we had a sleet storm coming through, and we were at a location. Thankfully, we were at this same location for 2 days, and we had exteriors and interiors on both days. But because of this snowstorm that was coming on one of the 2 days, we moved all of the exteriors to the day that didn't have the snowstorm, which made that day almost impossible to get because it was also daylight dependent, which means that it's an exterior day scene. And so once the sun goes down, you can't exactly shoot a day scene. Yeah. But that happened. That had to happen on the fly in a lot of ways. I mean, the day before, it depends on how much you categorize it as on the fly. But yeah, most of the schedule is dictated by exactly what you said, efficiency and logistics and the locations. Sometimes we don't have access to a location on certain days, and so those days are basically blocked out. Be like, you cannot shoot at this rooftop on these days, and so you cannot schedule it on those days. Or art department isn't going to be able to finish that set on day 1 or 2 or 3. It can't finish it until day 6. So now those particular sets of scenes cannot be shot until day 6 or later. There's just a lot of things that go into it. And you try to group together scenes for locations, of course. Like in this last script, we have a scene that takes place in a park. And on that same day, we shot at a pizzeria. So we had to find a pizzeria near the park because otherwise we're not going to move 45 minutes across the city. That's 45 minutes we're not going to get back on a day that's already really tight. So a lot goes into figuring out how you schedule the scenes, but I would say the bottom of that list is scene order.
We're just going to take a quick coughing break. But okay, so that tracks. I dig that. See, I find that stuff absolutely fascinating that we talk about that. We'll talk about boundaries a lot and how that fits into your work, and just getting into all those details of everything I find to be super, super interesting.
But you're right. A lot of our job is having to problem solve.
Making a super, super detailed plan, and then everything makes the plan not happen.
Yeah.
And then troubleshooting it in real time.
Yeah, troubleshooting.
It's amazing.
A lot of troubleshooting and a lot of real time shifting gears.
Yeah.
And figuring out how to resolve the issue. Because I'll tell you what, it's very rare that the way to solve the issue is to add a day of shooting. Or to... yeah, exactly.
A lot of times that's really hard. I can see how that just wouldn't be an option.
I mean, it's expensive.
Oh, sure.
And
I would assume nobody wants to.
And I'm not super heavily involved in this part. It's above my head, but I get the feeling that there's like a really big issue if you don't end on the day that you say you're going to end. I don't know exactly where that comes from, because you would think that there would be extenuating circumstances, and there certainly are. Like when Hurricane Katrina came through here in New York, the movie that I was working on at the time, they obviously, I mean, in any show that was working on at that time, their end date was moved because Katrina wiped them out for
Sandy.
Yeah.
Katrina was in the Gulf of
Europe. Wow, guys. Corrections corner. Real-time corrections corner. Katrina was the really big one. Sandy was big, but not really that bad. At least not...
Sandy hit a really, really big city.
Yeah, it did, and it flooded subways and all of that, but
Katrina is the one that practically destroyed New Orleans.
But Sandy, yes.
Yeah.
Sandy. My lights flickered a couple times. So depending on where you were in the city, my experience with Sandy was that it screwed over a lot of different parts of the city, but my particular area was totally fine. But yeah, so I just get the feeling, because there's so many times I'm like, the real solution to this, the easiest solution for this is to just add a day. But they very, very rarely ever do. And so based on that, I think that there is just a huge, other than not just the cost of it, there must be another reason above my head that...
Well, I would guess, not really having any idea, but I would guess that there are just as many dominoes after filming than there are during. You have so many moving pieces, and the most efficient production is one that has no margins because no margins are needed. You know, the more efficient you are, the fewer margins and buffer time you have to build in. But then once the filming is done, then post is in full swing. So I would assume that there's a breaking point there, and I would think that there was also another layer, because you've got production team, you've got two different teams that are working on doing these episodes. You do the evens.
This season.
You're doing the evens this season, so all the even episodes are yours. You don't touch the odd episodes at all. But then the actors don't have that flexibility to have prep time because they're on the whole time. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that there's just as much chaos and complication after the fact as there is during filming. That would be my guess as to why there isn't any buffer time to add days. Maybe.
I mean, I am sure there is a ripple effect that happens, but especially if it's like adding another day at the end of the season when there's no other, like, if the episode 20 is the last episode of the season, there's no 21 being prepped. While you're shooting 20, that's it. I mean, post and everything is dealing with multiple episodes at once, like editing and VFX and all these different things. But there's no one now planning for another episode. Mm-hmm. So most of the focus is on the current episode that's being shot, episode 20, if as in the example. So to add a day to that episode seems like it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. but they avoid it at all costs. So there's got to be a reason besides the money that is the way it is. Because I'll tell you what, when you're finished shooting on the last day of that episode, any episode, that is more often than not the end of the actual shooting of that episode. There's almost always inserts that are needed or makeup things that are needed. Not makeup as in face makeup, but making something up. Like maybe you missed coverage or something. The episode I'm shooting now, we missed the turnaround. Do you know what a turnaround is? Do most people know what a turnaround is?
Turnaround was going home and then coming back.
No. Oh, that's a different kind of turnaround. But on set, when we say we're turning around, it means that the first setup was over my shoulder onto Jeff. And we shot that. He did his coverage. And then we turn around. Now the cameras are behind him over his shoulder onto my face.
You do the whole thing again and then just cut it together.
Yes. And you can do things like cross coverage, which is doing both of it at the same time. But yeah, there's multiple different kinds of turnaround. The one he was just referring to was turnaround off time. Like how much of a turnaround do you get before you have to come back to work?
When you go home and you sleep and you travel and then you come back to work, your turnaround.
Yeah, the amount of time that from the time that you're done, from the time that you're called back, is how much turnaround you have. But in this context, the turnaround is the cameras and the setup turning around the scene. What you see is the turnaround. So in the episode I'm shooting now, we owe the turnaround of one of the scenes, and it's just over the backs of the characters onto a big screen. So it's not super hard to accomplish because you don't owe, the coverage of like someone's face. So you can just bring in some photo doubles and shoot over their backs onto the screen. So it's not a lot that's owed, but it's still something that's owed, something that is not going to be completed until after the episode officially stopped shooting. So it's not the case that at the last day of the episode, everything has to be done and shot, because there's self-ADR, which is additional dialogue recording. Actors have to come in and re-record their dialogue for things that didn't get picked up right, especially when you're on a roof and it's really windy. I bet you those actors are going to have to do additional dialogue recording for that.
And so that's when they'll do something like they'll show the back of the speaker's head and dub that over. Like the moments like that. Or they'll just straight up splice it into and just audio over the you know what I'm saying.
I do.
They'll lip sync themselves. Yeah, that.
Oftentimes during ADR is what they call it. The actor will have the scene in front of them, footage of the scene, so they can match up to their own lips while they're doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, when you're done, when the official last day of the episode is done, they don't have everything they need in order to make the episode. So adding another day does not necessarily hinder their ability to put the episode out on time. So again, there must be something more to it than that.
So there being something more to it than that, I was curious about talking about Lori and her dad. We'd mentioned this early just a little bit, but we didn't get time to talk about it. But then as the story unfolded, it played a lot more in. My whole thing was with Lori, this freshman, so she's 18, 19 at this point, right? In the car arguing with her dad. And he's trying to tell her what to do, how to live her life, and how these sorority girls are obviously terrible for her, and yada, 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 the Reverend. But I thought that her exerting her boundaries as an adult in this change, like, I'm not a kid anymore, I'm an adult, I can live where I want, I can do whatever I want. And he's like, yeah, but you're just going to go partying and drinking and all that stuff. So what? That's not the point. The point is, I'm the adult and you're no longer my authority, which I thought was a very interesting thing. And your answer to that was absolutely dead on, but it's still a good point. She's still a kid. She still has no idea what she wants, but she is out from under the authorship of the parents. So I liked that about her, and it made me, and I wanted to ask about like that transition time for you as well.
Well, let's be clear. I agree with what she did. Even if she is still a kid, she has to find her own way. She has to make her own mistakes. Most of what we learn in life is through making mistakes. So if you have a person, usually a parent in your life, who is essentially preventing you from making those mistakes by forcing you to live in some sort of box or bubble, then you're going to live a quite sheltered life, and you're not going to learn a lot of life lessons until much later in life. And so you'll be, in some ways, I don't want to say behind, because everybody does things at their own pace, but I think you, as a parent or person who's maybe a mentor or whatever, you do a big disservice to kids or whoever by not allowing them to make their own mistakes. Now, obviously, there's thresholds to that. I'm not saying just let every child out there just run rampant and do whatever the hell they want.
Give them a gun and a crack pipe and say, good luck, happy 18th
I'm
birthday.
certainly not advocating for that, but the way that he's trying to control her is not the way to go. I've seen that backfire. It's an age-old story of like the kid who was overly controlled by their parents, then rebelling later and making bigger mistakes than they otherwise would have if they would have just found themselves along the way.
Especially for preachers' kids, too. Like in certain areas where, especially if you have a parent who is typically in a leadership position, they can tend to hold on to that control a little longer. If someone is a authority of sorts, I've seen that rebellion happen with preachers' kids a lot more. You know, growing up in the South, I got to see a lot of that too. So yeah, there was. I'm trying to think of how to say this. The dad's response in this situation was still that of the parent of a child and parenting a child. And then her pushing back against was
a small child.
Her assertion into adulthood. Well, I mean, even if you go back a year, if she's a freshman, you go back a year, in this case, in their dynamic as these two characters, he's in the right.
Here's the thing. 18 is a completely arbitrary number that we made up.
It is an arbitrary but legal number, so it's still very important.
Sure, but the thing is, he's not thinking of it as a legal versus not legal thing. He's thinking of it as a parent of a child. He's not thinking it's illegal for me to tell her what to do. And I don't necessarily think that she's thinking it's illegal for him to tell me what to do. All she knows is that she's hit the bingo number and she's off at college nonetheless. So she's not under his roof anymore and exerting some type of freedom that she is now allowed at the age that she is. I don't think anyone there was saying, I'm going to go get a lawyer because I'm 18 now. And that's not how it was.
That's not the point, though.
The point is 18 is completely arbitrary.
It is not entirely arbitrary in this case, though, because she was still legally obligated to be home, under his roof, under his authority, anything that if he's telling her what she has to do as a 17-year-old, that's their entire dynamic. That's their entire relationship. My house, my rules, the whole 9 yards. While you're staring at me, we are definitely going to disagree on this. So I am looking forward to this. The point is, there was nothing that he was saying at that point that a year ago would not have been true and appropriate.
I think again, that's what I mean. The age of 18 is arbitrary. We made it up.
That, but that's not the point.
The point is, he wasn't going to say that whether she's 19, 20, 22. This is the type of father he is. He's going to say it regardless of what her age is.
I agree with you there. Yeah, definitely.
And so the fact that legally he can't say it, or he can't do anything about it.
The law.
It just, I don't know. I don't think it changes the moment at all for me. It doesn't make it any difference because she could have been 24 and he could have been saying the exact same thing and she would have said the exact same thing.
No, I agree with you there. I agree with you there. And that's why I'm praising her, Lori, setting boundaries in this situation. I'm praising that because, yeah, somebody like that will continue to assert as long as they're able to. They'll continue to assume the authority even though they no longer have it. That parental boundary exists the way that it does for a reason because the parent is responsible for taking care of the child. But when a person becomes an adult and they can go out on their own, and they do go out on their own, someone who has a bit more of that authority will keep it as long as it's still implied. As long as there's no boundary drawn, they'll keep doing it. So yeah, I believe that you're right. 18, 22, 27, he would have kept doing it, which is why I was praising her for drawing that space right there. Now, granted, she's still 18. She's still a stupid kid. She has no idea what she's doing. But it was a very good move on her end to do that.
Yeah. I think that...
You do not agree.
I do. I do agree that it was a good thing on her part to exert a boundary. I do. I think that she... regardless of the 18 of it all, at 17, she probably could have had the same conversation with him, even if she's not legally within her rights to.
She could have tried.
Yeah, exactly.
But he would not have been out of line to say what he said a year before.
The thing is,
there's a lot of variables in there, a lot of ifs for sure. She seems relatively well balanced. She seems pretty responsible.
I mean, I guess it depends on how you define out of line. If it's defined as legally he's allowed to exert that power.
I'm not pushing the legally thing at all. That's you.
Well, that's what I mean, though. You said he's not, but I mean, we could talk about literally the day before she turns 18, and the way you're saying it is that he's not out of bounds the day before her 18th birthday, but once he turns 18, now he's out of bounds.
Yes.
See, I don't agree with that. I think it's the line.
He says, I don't trust this situation. Your boyfriend was just murdered. I don't trust the situation that you're in, so this is what I want to happen to a 17-year-old or a 7-year-old. Entirely appropriate. It's his call. It's the parents' call. And we found out her mom had passed away at a certain point, but it's the parents' call. The day before 18th birthday is all the same.
But that is a legal question, though. That's the thing.
It's not a question of legality.
It is,
It's a question of whether or not that's an appropriate dynamic between between a parent-child.
But it all boils down to legal, because what's the difference between 11 p.m. 59 minutes and 12 a.m.? What's the difference? What changed there besides the legal part of it, of her becoming 18?
Responsibility. I mean, if you want to boil all of this around into, call that the legal category, fine. But if she goes running out and drives a car into a house or into a mall and hurts people, the parents are liable for that. After 18, not so much.
Sure, but that's also a super line of gray as well. I mean, you've seen 13-year-old murderers. Nothing happens to the parents. Because,
I don't know that for sure. Is that true?
Yes, it is. It depends. It's every situation is different, and that's the point.
This could be another interesting conversation to go get some more info. Get some people calling in with,
sure.
Well, what about this? What about that?
As someone who is a fan of true crime, I know that you're right in that, like, the parents hold responsibility or whatever, but it just depends. It depends on the situation. Every situation is different.
Yeah, I am going to do some research on this one because I'm really curious. Because I mean, if a kid jumps the neighbor's fence, jumps in the pool, and breaks furniture, the parents are responsible for the repairs.
Sure.
To the damage that their kids do. But the parents don't go do jail time if a 13-year-old takes a gun somewhere and hurts somebody.
Sure.
The kid goes to juvie. So you're right. Where is that line? That's a good one. I don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah. So again, the reason I'm saying all this, it literally boils down to the legal part of it.
I don't know, man.
And that's why, because you said yourself, after 18, she is now responsible for all of her actions. Nothing blows back on him. But that's because of the legal thing that we've said in this country.
I still think there is a relationship element that is not just a legal conversation. Her drawing the boundaries and saying, hey, look, I am of the age now where I can do, and I am independent, I can do whatever. That's it. That's where this conversation ends. That's not a legal conversation. That's good boundaries.
Right, but she also could have done that when she was 17, too. Or 16.
She would have been wrong.
But again, then it goes back to the legal part. That's the thing. It has what you're saying has nothing to do with her actual mentality, her responsibility, her ability to function in the world in a responsible way. Everything you're saying has nothing to do with that, because again, the example of 11:59 p.m. and 12 a.m. on her birthday. The only thing that has changed there, the only thing, is that she is 18 and now in America legally an adult and responsible for all of her actions. That is the only thing that has changed.
You literally just listed off all of those things that change in that 1 second and said that that's the only thing that changed.
No, I'm saying her herself didn't change.
Her physical body did not change any differently in that 1 second.
And the person that she is.
But the relationship does change at the moment that someone decides to start adulting. and there could be influence. We are going to have to come back around to this another time because this is fun. The dynamic of the relationship changes, and there are implications about caretaking that do affect that can overlap, may influence. But at the time that a person decides to become an adult, their relationship with their parents changes.
Sure. And in the case of becoming 18, the only thing that actually changes the ability for the parent to do anything is the legal part of it.
Yeah, but that's not my point. You keep pulling it back to the 18 and legal part, and that's not what I'm saying. If she's still living at home under her dad's caretaking, and he says, you're not going to go do this thing because I don't feel like it would be safe, he's right. He is in the right in that moment. But if she has moved out of the house, she is in school, she is paying her own bills, so I assume she's probably paying some of her own bills at least, but she is adulting in that case. And he says, this is what I want you to do because I don't think it's safe. And she's like, no, I am going to make my own decisions now.
Okay. So then if she's 17, she graduated early and she's gone off to college. She's 17 and living in this dorm and she's got a job. She's paying her own bill. Is he out of bounds to say what he said then?
I don't know. There are some additional questions about caretaking.
Because by law, still, he is responsible for her, regardless of the fact that she's moved out and has started her own life outside of the home.
Which we would need to look and be sure. Because how can he be responsible for her well-being if she's living somewhere else? Which this goes back to the drum corps days, too. When we would get on a bus for 3 months as 16, 17, 18-year-olds, who's responsible? Who's responsible for your actions as a teenager? Mm-hmm. And who is responsible for your well-being as well. I want to do some research and come back to this. Can we do that?
You can go ahead and do the research. We can do some...
I know.
Some research corners later.
Research corners, corrections corners. This house is going to have a lot of corners in it by the time we're done. And I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the parking ticket.
Yeah, that was so random.
It was so random and nothing happened. That's the thing. Okay, so...
Yeah. Introduce a gun.
Following up, yeah. As soon as we got out, yeah, that was it. If you introduce a gun, who said that?
It's some director.
It was the Hitchcock. Hitchcock said that. Said if you introduce a gun in a scene, you have to fire the gun by the end of the scene. Something along those lines. But yeah, when they came back out from breaking and entering into
the crime scene.
Yeah, assaulting up a crime scene. There's 2 felonies. Then there was a parking ticket on the car. And they were standing outside, standing right at the front of Baby talking about it. I was like, hold on, there's a parking ticket on the window. And you're just like, I never noticed that before. But then they go walk around the sides of the car to get in the car. Dean reaches in, pulls up the parking ticket, looks at it. They don't show us the ticket. They just show us like this in shot, shoot in. What do they call that?
Insert.
Insert, yeah. They show this insert of him reaching out and grabbing it. So you can't see anything that's on it. You can just see that it's a ticket. He looks at it, shrugs, and gets in the car and leaves. And then we don't see it anymore.
When he picked it up, I was like, oh, I think I know what they're going to do. He's going to crumple it up and throw it away, which is like, it's another example of how Dean operates.
That would be Deanish.
But he didn't. So I was like, wait a second. What was the point of all of that then?
See, and that's what I'm hoping, like, maybe sometime way down the road, they'll come back to Ankeny, Iowa, and they get pulled over, or they end up having a meeting with the city mayor or something like that, and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, that parking ticket that you just completely avoided, I went ahead and scratched that. And they can kind of make an if you know, you know joke. So you know the show better than I do. Maybe there was a reference that you just missed. I doubt it. But it seems so weird that they would work all of that in. You've got the insert, you've got the one of the main actors actually interacting with it, but then what was the point?
Yeah.
Why?
They didn't shoot the gun by the end of the episode. So
maybe something got cut. You know what we need to do is go back and watch the deleted scene.
Oh, there is a deleted scene on that one. Now that we have the DVDs.
Yeah, maybe there was something in there. So we might have a corrections corner. Would that be a research corner? A digging deeper corner?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of corner.
How many more corners do we have? Okay. Favorite thing? Is there anything else you want to throw in there?
Did you get everything off your list?
I mean, I got the baby parking ticket. I thought that the effect, we've made fun of the CGI so far at this point because it's 20 years old. But the way that they burned off the Hookman, I thought was it looked really good. It was clean. It was simple. They didn't try to overproduce it. and I thought it looked really good. They kind of ashed him out, and he just sort of fell out of the screen instead of trying to do something that they didn't really have the ability to do.
Yeah.
I liked that.
They worked within their means, yeah.
And also, good for Sam for finally getting some kissy face. And he kept it classy, too.
Did you see Sam's disappointment when he, like, kind of rejected her, though, at the end? Not Sam. Dean's disappointment.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I caught that, too.
He was just like, ah.
I know. Poor Dean, he just doesn't understand.
Well, I think he's trying... He wants Sam to be getting better.
Yeah.
And that's an indication. And that's an indication that he's not, and so he's disappointed.
Well, but also he didn't know about the kiss.
The original one, yeah.
Yeah.
The first one, the actual one that happened, yeah.
That'd be true. Yeah. And apparently, Reverend Father almost caught him. That would have been a very different twist on the story. But yeah, I thought that was really good. Because Dean's gotten some lovins a few times.
Yeah. I also did enjoy the kind of deeper theme of the episode of what you mentioned of, growing up, learning a certain way of things. And then as you're getting older, you realize the world is not black and white. The world is not as simple as you were taught it was or thought it was as a child. And there really is kind of a growing up, that she's growing up in these, like, what is it, a week's time or something? She's like really...
It's a little over a week, yeah.
Really having to open her eyes to a world very different from the one that she was taught and grew up in.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a nice little C story element of just kind of being slapped in the face by the real world in a lot of ways.
Or in her situation, being completely traumatized. But yeah, she kept saying that. She kept saying that over and over again. Is that I always believed if you did something wrong, then you should get punished.
Yeah. And that obviously served the storyline of why the spirit attached to her and what it's doing and why he's doing what he's doing. But I do think it is, saying the quiet part out loud of kids going into adulthood and figuring out the world is not simple. Yeah. It is many layers and shades of gray and not just black and white, right and
black
wrong.
And white theories that get tested in reality.
Yeah.
And hers ends up killing 3 people.
And I do, too, think that I like that the Reverend, this upstanding man of religion or whatever is having an extramarital affair. Because that is such indicative of the reality we live in.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there are a lot of reverends and ministers or whatever out there that live lovely, upstanding, real upstanding lives. But at the end of the day, we're talking every single one of them is a human being. Every single one of them. And every single one of them makes mistakes. And I mean, not for nothing, true crime fan, a lot of times we find out that the people that are doing nefarious things with children are the pastors and the teachers and the coaches and the whatevers. And that's obviously not true of every single one of them. I am not coming for pastors and teachers and all that. But the truth of the matter is those people are surrounded by children, so they have more opportunity to. And if they, have a proclivity for something like that, they have the opportunity a lot more than random Joe Schmo who's living a bachelor life down the street. And even if that person does have the proclivity for it, that random Joe Schmo, what kids is he accessing? And they do, don't get me wrong, the random Joe Schmo also can attack kids too. This happens, obviously, but I think that the ratio is probably higher to those who work in fields with kids, simply because the ability to access or the access to kids is much, much, much higher.
Well, and that's going to open up a whole other chapter of something as well. But it to tie it back into the kids coming to adulthood and their black and white theories, bad things should happen to bad people, good things should happen to good people. It's just one of those things. But another statistic to support the one that you were just talking about is that in almost every single situation where you have ministers becoming predators around children, or and also with affairs and secret affairs of leadership positions, almost every one of those situations, the same thing happened to them. almost every single time. Somebody who commits assault of a child, that kind of thing. It almost always happened to them when they were children as well. So they're in a repetitious cycle. And I think that being in some situations like leadership, especially in church leadership, can become very complicated because there's so many things that are taboo that you can't discuss. You have to hold this position of infallibility, and that makes it worse. It makes it harder.
The upstanding morals. There's no room for you to have made a mistake.
Well, because you can't get help. If you see it coming before something happens, like if you see it, and this could apply, I'm opening up because I want to make it look like I'm targeting anybody. But if somebody is struggling with gambling or shopping, with retail, then there could, and you're in a position where you have to appear to be more successful or bigger or more morally liable. All of those things can make it impossible to get help before it gets out of your control.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, and I know that there's been, in some of the true crime stories that I've heard about, one of the major issues, and I think it was talking about the Catholic Church, one of the major issues was that these, what are they called in the Catholic Church?
What, priests?
Priests. Oh, priests had issues, and there was reports of them having some sort of something with a kid, and instead of getting that individual help, they are like sent away to another place because they're hiding it because
there's a responsibility.
Exactly. And that and it's exactly what you said, is that like you can't possibly admit that something bad has happened,
right?
Because these are the people that are supposed to be the upstanding moral citizens of the world, so that we can't possibly have made this person a priest if they didn't have that moral fiber, whatever the hell.
True.
And so they hide it.
But also, and the person who's going through that experience, most of the time it's not a situation where they do it and they're like, okay, I'm fine, I just need to hide all the evidence. Most of the time there's a progression of getting to the heinous acts that we see and hear about. There's always a progression. And there's a lot of times during that time that people are in a state where they're looking for help. They want to get help with it, and then they can't get help, so they continue doing it. But they are looking for a way, because at that early stage, you feel the bad of it, but you can't figure out how to channel that. You can't figure out how to channel it into change. And so the same thing happens with people who have gambling problems or shopping addictions or whatever. It always starts small, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it gets out of that person's control, and that's when something bad happens, basically. And then the part where you can't, because of your position, because of your perception. We see a lot of celebrities, social media influencers, they end up getting caught for this massive stuff because it becomes such a problem for them to be able to say, hey, I'm a person. I've made a mistake. I've got a problem. And I think to pull it all the way back in is that black and white view of the world that children have, that kids have as they become adults. They realize that this could be anybody. Mm-hmm. It could be your parents. It could be the people that you look up to and trust and really admire, your heroes. It's not as simple as it seems. Mm-hmm. And also the monsters, they're among you. They're in the world around you. And if you knew their story, you wouldn't hold it against them as much as you do. Yeah,
I think
that's the hard part.
I think it's that cliche line of, either it was a predator or a murderer or whatever. And, everybody that knew that person is like, he was such a nice guy, or she was such a nice person, and I never in a million years would have thought that this was about them, because they were a father or a mother, or they volunteered with the local Boy Scout troop, and they were just this upstanding citizen with a dark secret. And I think the whole point to this is that anybody in our world, anybody is subject to making mistakes or having a dark secret or, something that they're struggling with. And some of those things that are being struggled with are worse than others. And by worse, I mean they are inflicting pain on another human, rather than just upon themselves. They're both bad, but if you got to choose one, I would prefer you not to hurt other people with your struggle.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that they made the dad fallible, because that's indicative of real life. That was a lot to just say that.
Well, and again, I wish they could have had more time to dig into those things. I wish that they could have unpacked it a little bit more, maybe shown some kind of a redemption arc for the dad. Like, we had so little into that. It's a huge thing for a freshman in college to realize that her dad, the reverend, is a hypocrite, and she has so much anger about it. And I wish that we could have had some more time to unpack that and to play that out a little bit more, to see maybe some redemption between the two of them. And there's no time. I totally get that. But I thought it was it was cool that they went that direction. I thought it was really interesting that they went that way.
Yeah, it's a great C storyline. Speaking of what you liked, what was your favorite part?
Well, they did talk about their dad. For, 2 lines? He would go check this out. But they're keeping him in, so I guess that was good. My favorite part... Actually, you know what? That jump scare.
With the dad getting hooked?
No. Oh, yeah. With dad getting hooked in the doorway. Because my first thought is, oh, shit, he saw them kissing. Like, that's what I'm looking for. And he's like, you need to come inside right now. I kind of wanted him to, pull out a shotgun or something, or a crowbar. But no, dude just gets hooked in the neck. Oh.
That's so funny because I knew it was coming, so it didn't, First time watcher, I guess.
Yeah, that got me. And I respect it. I respect that this show in particular seems to be really good at making you look left and throwing something at you from the right.
All right.
I like that. They keep it unexpected. I hope they never fall into this episodic formula. I really hope they don't ever do that. And they've been doing a good job with that so far. What about you?
The more I'm talking about it, the more I think that C storyline is my favorite. Just the
which one, Lori growing up?
Yeah, just the idea that when you're a kid, things seem much different than what they actually end up being, and having to learn that lesson. I think I like that because it's just so indicative of real life in a lot of ways. Now they sped it up because it only had 45 minutes.
Wait, you didn't grow up in 45 minutes? For me, I was so fast.
And to quickly answer the question you asked me earlier regarding this whole, turning 18, boundaries, transition, whatever, honestly, there really wasn't much of one because I, as a teenager, was already so responsible and took care of my shit that my parents didn't really exert that parental authority on me. I didn't have a curfew. Granted, I also didn't go out very much. Introvert. But my homework was done. I got good grades. I was in all these different activities and was a responsible member of those activities to the point that I'm getting the academic award for the track team as opposed to, I don't know, an achievement-based award. Although I do have the pole vault record at my high school.
Oh boy.
Won't dive into that right now as to why it's not super impressive, guys.
Yes, it is.
No,
yes, it is.
The short of it is, I was one of the only pole vaulters who exists at my school.
Doesn't matter.
That's why.
No,
but anyway,
20 years of your name's still on the wall.
Yeah, because there hasn't been any pole vaulters since.
Irrelevant.
But the point is, me going off to college and all of that, it wasn't really a transition for me. Maybe it was for my parents, I don't know. But for me, it just felt like a natural, just kept doing my life and being responsible. And I can't recall a time when I was off at college or any time in my life where my parents were like, well, because I say so, you're doing this or whatever. And when I was a kid, obviously, when I'm being a little brat or something, but
don't put the fork in the socket. I'm in college. You can't tell me what to do.
But it wasn't a necessary transition for us because I already was, I don't know, allowed to do what I wanted to do. And I wasn't making choices that were unreasonable for my parents to exert an authority against.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying well, I'm going to go out and party and you guys can't do anything. I just didn't really want to go out and party. I didn't care to do that. It wasn't a part of my scene or my vibe. So I didn't really have that kind of struggle that I think maybe you did because you got out of Dodge as fast as you possibly could. I was like, I don't really care. No matter where I live, I'm doing what I want, really. Mm-hmm. So I think the extent of it was when I lived at home my freshman year to save money because I went to a school nearby, was that I just like would let them know just out of courtesy, like if I was not going to be around. Like if I did go out with friends late, I would say like I'm not going to be home for dinner, that sort of thing. But not because they were like, well, you better be home by the. There was nothing like that. It was just respectful and courteous to let somebody that you're living with and potentially is waiting on you for dinner to let them know, like, I don't know when I'm going to be back, but it will be late.
Yeah.
But there was no checking in or anything like that. Like, okay, how much longer are you going to be? No, none of that. So I think my parents did a really good job of just allowing me to make my own decisions, setting me up for success to make those decisions, but not forcing anything.
Right.
So kudos to my parents. Clap, 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 clap.
So what about least favorite? Least favorite part of the episode?
I cringed a little bit with the opening, like, hook going across the signs. I was like, that just doesn't look great.
Yeah.
And the fact that she ran away, then turned around. I was like, look, she's going through a traumatic moment, so like emotion overtakes logic. So I'm leaving room for that. But it's like, I feel like the first thing I would do if I was just thinking get out of there and don't use the car is to like get out and as I'm running, looking back. But she like runs, then stops.
Assess the situation, right?
And I'm like, okay, but you heard something going on the roof. Wouldn't your first inclination be, even if you want to get out of there, to like look up as you're running, be like, what was it that I was hearing?
Yeah. Like, and I knew they were setting that up too, because I noticed as she's got out of the car, they kept the shot lined up at the top of the car. They would not show us as she got out of the car. They wouldn't show us anything going on.
And every time I have these, I guess, crises of logic, I always remember when I was shooting a TV show and I had a writer friend and I questioned why this character was doing something in the script. I was like, it makes no freaking sense. Like the person he's going to for help is the enemy. There's no reason why he would think that this person is going to help him. He's been coming after him, da-da-da-da. And the writer's response was that logic has no space in a emotional decision. And I was like, so every time I think of this logical thing, I'm like, okay, but when you're really emotional, sometimes logic has no play in it. Now, that's not true of everybody. Some people are good in a crisis and can like push logic through the emotion. And I think I'm more one of those people. I have that ability more. And I think maybe that's why it surprised me. Like, why is this person doing this? It makes no freaking sense logically. But I also, I guess, am coming to find out that other people don't have that ability. That they're pure emotion. Mm-hmm. And she's 18, she's young, she hasn't had a life to maybe have that practice of having to push logic through emotion. And so maybe that's what it is. It was purely just, I got to get the hell out of here. And then being like, oh, wait, something was on the roof. Oh, shit. I don't know. And so I'm trying to leave that space, even though Stephanie is like, I don't know that I would have done it that way.
Fair. Yeah. And she had her blood curling scream.
That your least favorite part?
No, my least favorite was the fact that Dean lit like a home. Dean lit to a sorority house. This boy was a frat boy that didn't get to go to college. But he went to a sorority house, and then he was always the one that was off in the back scenes taking care of whatever. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just a little bit more annoyed about it than anything else.
That he didn't take advantage?
I feel like he might have. Would have. Yeah, even a little bit. You got a girl in a little tank top or tube top or whatever, so the pool table, turns around and starts staring at him. And he's like, we're here to party. I'll get out to the cemetery later. I really expected, like, it felt like they were setting that up.
Well, he did give this, like, big sigh of disappointment of, like, oh, I gotta go do my job. Yeah. So it tracked. I think it tracked with him, but I really think that the thing is, what I don't think tracked necessarily is that I think the Dean we know would be like, Sam, you go and dig up the preacher. I'll go hang out with the girl. But the reason they didn't do that, of course, is because Sam is vibing with this girl, and so we want to see that as an audience. Yeah. But maybe Dean was trying to be that way for, like, give his little brother a little, yeah, like
maybe,
yeah. And honestly, that does track for Dean because Dean in the series will definitely try and champion his brother a lot, like kind of. He definitely over says, nope, Sam, you have to do the stupid, gross, whatever thing, and I'm going to get to do the cool thing. He definitely does that too. But we do see him do the opposite as well, as like give him a bone, like kind of encourage him, like that attaboy, that sort of thing. So
and I think the fact that he didn't seize any of that opportunity, I mean, Dean's personality, he was in a candy store. He didn't do anything. It just didn't line up.
He made a lot of comments.
A little bit. He made a whole lot of comments.
Yeah.
But the fact that this guy's willing to make out or kissy face with a recently widowed woman right in front of her kid, it's...
Maybe it just wasn't time.
I guess.
Maybe it's a cut scene.
We're going to go check the deleted scenes after this just to make sure we didn't miss anything clutch. Like what happened with the parking ticket. So I guess that'll be my official answer. I didn't really have anything that I just flat out didn't like. Like the effects were good. The writing felt solid. I mean, the actress that played Lori, she was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't necessarily... Well, at the beginning, I wasn't necessarily being sold on her. But the longer the show went, I bought in. So it made sense. I know people who have gone through very similar struggles, having grown up in a very, very faith-centric small town in the South, are very used to that kind of culture and that sort of struggle that people go through as they're reaching adulthood. And it's a lot of people turn that into rebellion. A lot of people do a lot of things with it. But I understood the struggle, so I was convinced for her by the end. I was convinced with Lori. So I guess that's it. I was fine with the episode. Nothing really upset me about it. I'm glad to move on to the next one.
Oh well. Speaking of, the next one is Bugs. Not my favorite episode, but we'll see what happens.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, Christy and I are on the same page with this one, but actually the actors too. But
there's a lot of times when we're watching it, and I try not to notice, but out of my peripheral, I can tell sometimes when you're watching me, which says that something's coming. I'm excited to have one that's actually going to affect you so much that you'll be experiencing it instead of studying me.
Yeah. I will say I have an honorable mention. Taylor, the actress who played Taylor, she played that good. She played that good. That was a good deadness that she had going on there. So
good deadness.
Good job for her. And on that note,
yeah.
On that note, you have to remember that the driver always picks the music.
Shotgun Shots is K-Cole.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.